All right, guys, welcome. Today we'll be going through the consumer debt dashboard. This was made with data supplied by TransUnion. We actually just got an email today that we're going to be getting a little bit more data from TransUnion, just getting the number of consumers with trades across the different trade lines. So expect to see the data set updated just a little bit. Okay, I'm going to get into sharing my screen. We'll just share the dashboard. All right, you guys should see the welcome page. So every
Yes.
dashboard starts off with a welcome page, and this welcome page has a few sections. It goes over what you can explore and how to control the dashboard, but we'll be going through that today, so I won't go into detail on that right now. But the first line just reads, "This dashboard provides a detailed interactive view of consumer credit health and debt profiles across Canadian communities. It's designed to help you explore localized financial metrics, including debt breakdowns, credit participation, and delinquency rates to better understand the economic landscape of different regions." Um, this right here is an information icon. So whenever you hover over these information icons, you get a little pop-up that allows you to view more. If you're interested in the data source, you can click either of these hyperlinks. The first is to the TransUnion data, and then the second is to just some annual population estimates. These annual population estimates are used to calculate the credit participation rate. I'll go over that a bit more detail just in a moment. Um, so yeah, this is the welcome page, and then we can click this big button here to go to the dashboard. So right off the bat, you're hit with this map, and then you're hit with a ranking on the side. The ranking and the map are in this Vertus 20 scale that I really like, this coloring scale that goes from this dark purple to this extreme yellow. It's a little bit hard to read this yellow, so if you can't read the yellow on the white background, just hover over to get the value. You're left with a few different filters here to go through the different levels of geography as well as um, drill down into specific geographies. So let's say I'm interested in my geography of interest, which would be Guelph. That's where I live. So I'd go into census subdivision because I want to get the census subdivision of Guelph. And then I know that it's Ontario, so I'm just going to go down to Ontario. And then I know that it's in the Wellington census division. So I'm going to scroll down to Wellington. And then from here, I can select it on this geography filter, or I could click it on the map if I know my geography a bit better. And it's nice. You can see the colors. You can see that the southern part where we get more rural is more has more total debt per consumer, and then up in North Wellington is less total debt per consumer. I don't know why it's north south like this. There's probably no reason really. And then Guelph proper is just here in the middle, and they have 74,000 average total debt per consumer, which is around the middle for Wellington Census Division, it appears. And you can see the ranking here on the side as well to get that a bit easier. Just go through another example. Maybe we'll go take a look at, let's see, some CMAs. So if this ever happens to you, the map is just gone. That just means that it's an invalid selection. Usually you can tell because there's these brackets on the drop-down menus, and then you just have to select all again because we went from census subdivisions to CMAs, and they have different parent groupings. So now we're looking at census metropolitan areas. It's kind of hard to see all these, so I'm just going to go down to Alberta. Okay, Alberta up here, we got Wood Buffalo. If anyone's looked at the tax filer data, Wood Buffalo usually has some of the highest income, so it's not surprising that they have very high total debt per consumer.
Mm.
We can also change the metric here to any of these from the drop down. So we have delinquency rates for overall across 30 days, 30 to 59 days, 60 to 89 days, 90 days. And then we have the different trade lines. So auto loan, credit card, installment, line of credit, mortgage, non-mortgage delinquency rates. And then we have average debt per consumer for those as well. Credit card participation rate and credit card utilization rate, which I'll define a bit better in a moment. Line of credit participation rate, line of credit utilization rate, credit participation rates per age bracket, credit scores above prime or equal to prime, and then credit scores below prime, and then just total consumers. So if we want to have, I mean, total consumer is just going to be a proxy for population pretty much. but it's still good to have there. Let's click into Edmonton, look at some Edmonton stats. So we can see the rankings across the side here. You can sort these rankings as well. Like if you wanted to sort, or actually, yeah, if you wanted to sort alphabetically, you can do that by using this drop down here. So now we're sorted by alphabetical, or we can sort by the rank of the measure, which will be the same as the value of the measure, right? Because the rank and the value are correlated. So yeah, if you want an alphabetical, you can do that. It makes it just so that if you have lots of them here, so we have all of the CNAs in Canada now. If you're just looking for a specific one, then you can very easily find it. Like let's say Oshawa, for example, we can see Oshawa is ranked 8. And then if you want, you can click on Oshawa within the table as well to select it to see the statistics below. So you can either click on the map or you can click on the chart. Both will do the same function. Oh, and it looks like it just got a little bit broken there. So you see this, how all these hashtags are here. This means there's too many selections going on. I'm not exactly sure why that happened just now, but if we click one, it should fix itself. Yeah. Okay, let's go back to the rank of the measures. Let's see the number one for average total debt per consumer. It seems to be Ottawa and then Wood Buffalo. It's the part of Ottawa within Quebec.
Interesting.
Yeah. If we take a look at, let's see, what
So,
else is interesting here? Maybe overall delinquency rates. And then I'm going to switch my view back to census divisions, just because I find it easier to view the colors. So what pops out to me right away is this 10.3%. We can see in Region 3, within, I believe, Northwest Territories, is 10.3% delinquency rate. And then the lowest delinquency rate is 1.3%. And I'm not even going to try to pronounce that. I guess I will. Ile d'Orleans, I believe. So yeah, you can select different measures. I left it on average total consumer debt for the main view, just because I find that's one of the most interesting metrics for me personally. I'm going to click somewhere a bit more populated just because Owen Sound isn't giving credit participation rates. So these credit participation rates don't show up for CMAs or census tracts just because we don't have um, the age breakdowns in these brackets appropriately. So we just have that available um, for census subdivision, census division, province. And that's noted here within the information bubble as well. So I'm going to go click into Halton because they should have some good data. Yeah. So if we scroll down now, we'll get some charts. So you can see from this title that we clicked on Toronto and that they have a total consumers of 2.478 million. The first chart that we have here is participation rates. So this can go up to 100%, and sometimes you might see this over 100%, and that's because the reference date for the TransUnion data and the population data has a bit of a gap. So the TransUnion data is coming from 2025 Q1, and then the population estimates are coming from July 2024. So there's about a 6-month gap. So there's a little bit of inaccuracy within this value, which leads to it being over 100% sometimes. So just take that of note if you're going to be using the statistic here. So we can see that the credit participation rate is highest among 35 to 64%, but across the board, it's quite high at 82%. So what this means is that 82% of the population aged 18 to 34 has some sort of credit product with TransUnion, right? There's some sort of consumer with TransUnion. So they could have a credit card, they could have an auto loan, they could have a mortgage, any of those things, right? And that means that they're participating in credit. And typically you want to see credit participation rate higher because a higher participation rate just means that you have sort of a healthier economy because people are taking on a little bit of debt, which is good, but then you want to check to make sure that, credit scores are still good and that the average total debt isn't too high per consumer. But participation in general is good. So this measures the proportion of the population that has an active credit profile. It's a core indicator of financial inclusion. A low participation rate often points to systemic barriers to accessing traditional financial institutions, indicating that a segment of the community might be relying on the shadow economy like payday loans or unregulated loaners. And it answers the question, is the community adequately integrated into the mainstream financial system? So maybe we'll look at the map quickly and just see some rankings for the credit participation rate. So if we do 18 to 34, see how my map's all zoomed in like this? This is because I was zooming in manually and panning around manually. If you want the map view to reset, you can go over here and click this little push pen icon, and then that's going to reset my view to whatever I have selected. So we're looking at credit participation rates, and we can see that right here, it's 128% in Squamish. So this is what I was talking about, how it's a little bit inaccurate, right? So that's probably not a very accurate value. But if you had a place that doesn't have very much population growth or has had slow population growth, then it'll be more accurate, right? We can see the lowest is in division number 19. If we look across the map, it's pretty consistent. Or no, it's not. It's not consistent. But if we look at the rankings here, we can see there's only a couple that go over 100. So there's 128, 117, and then 100%. And then we have some close to the 90s. And if we go down, the lowest is 34% division number 19. So it's quite low. So if we scroll down, we're still looking at Toronto here. Now, if we look at this right chart, we just have this sort of red versus green, bad versus good, I guess you could say, of credit scores. So this is equal to or greater to 720, which they define as prime, and then less than 720 is subprime. So we can see that a good proportion of the population has a above prime or prime credit score. You want to see high credit scores, obviously. Credit score is a numerical representation of consumer credit risk and overall financial health, typically segmented into tiers, so subprime, near prime, prime, prime plus, and super prime. If you look at the TransUnion data set, it actually breaks these out into those different prime groups. If you're interested in getting more detail, you can check out the data set, but we just chose to group them together into prime and subprime for this visual. Why is it interesting? It acts as a proxy for a community's financial resilience. Tracking the concentration of subprime versus prime consumers over time can highlight localized economic distress, recovery, or even gentrification. It answers the question, how vulnerable is this specific geographic area or demographic to an economic shock? So if you have a very high credit, that's good. If you got really low credit, that's bad. Yeah. Next, we have the breakdown of average consumer debt by these different debt types. So the debt types, again, are line of credit, installment, credit card, auto, non-mortgage, mortgage, and total. So non-mortgage is made of these auto, credit card, installment, and line of credit. Those are your non-mortgage, these four here. So these four bars equal up to this fifth bar. And then these, all the bars beneath the yellow bar equal the total, right? And then the mortgage and non-mortgage equal the total as well. And this is just pretty straightforward. Average consumer debt per, or average debt per consumer is pretty straightforward. It measures the average amount of debt carried by each consumer. It gauges the financial burden carried by residents when segmented by product. It reveals how debt is being accumulated. Reliance on high non-mortgage debt can indicate a reliance on credit for daily living expenses, whereas high mortgage debt speaks to housing market dynamics. Note that the averages are based off total consumers, which includes consumers with zero balance for specific types. So if someone has zero mortgage debt, they're going to be included in this, right? So that's why this number is going to be lower than you see sometimes reported by other people. Like I was recently at an Equifax meeting, and they reported on average total debt per consumer as well, and it was quite a bit higher, but it was because they were looking at, or sorry, it was average mortgage debt per consumer, but it's because they weren't looking at total consumers, they were looking at the number of mortgage trades, so they weren't taking into account the trades with zero balance. Whereas we do here, but in the future, it's possible to have this chart also be with the zero balances as well once we get the new data coming in. And we might just throw that graph together and put it in here. This shouldn't be too bad. So yeah, if we see here, the main burden of debt is coming from the line of credit for non-mortgage within Toronto. at 9,581. The average credit card debt per consumer is 3,000. Average auto is quite low at 2,874. Some surprising, I don't know, I found these numbers surprising. So maybe when we do it without the $0 loans, it'll be a lot different. And that's something that you might want to check out on your own, and you could calculate those with or you could calculate them, I believe, except for the non-mortgage debt, because things just don't add up properly right now. Um, so next we have these two charts here that kind of relate to each other: credit utilization rates and credit participation rates. So there's a bit of a difference between these two. So utilization rates is the total trade balance divided by the trade limit. So the balance divided by the limit. So it's how much of the credit card or line of credit are they actually using, right? So right now we can see that the average credit card debt per consumer from this chart is $3,000, just about, but the utilization rate is only 20%. So that means that even though we're seeing $3,000 of credit card debt per consumer, people are only using 20% of their credit card, which is not, very high on average. So that would suggest that these people have a limit of like $12,000 on average if they're only using 20% and they have $3,000. But that's just a little napkin math. You can do that to get like the average limit sort of deal, but it's not very accurate. And then participation rate is if they have one. So if they have a balance on their bank card, then they're participating. So a little bit different there. This is the balance with the credit limit, and then this is just the balance with the trades. So you can be participating so they have high participation rate, but low utilization rate. So there's 75% of people are participating in credit card usage. So 75% of people have a balance on their credit card, but of those people with credit cards, they're only using about 20% of the credit card. Likewise, with line of credit, we can see line of credit is 52.6% for participation rate, but only 35.5% for utilization rate, which is interesting. So if we go back to the top here, it might be cool to take a look at credit card utilization rate across the country for census divisions. We'll hit that push pin again. So again, if you remember, region number 3 had the lowest, I believe, credit participation rate. Let's just switch back. No, it was not credit participation rates. Okay, here. If we look at credit scores, subprime, region number 3 has the highest amount of subprime credit scores at 84.7%. Keep in mind they only have 1,500 consumers, but they have the highest subprime credit scores. And then if we also take a look at the credit card utilization rate, we can see as well that they have the highest credit card utilization rate. So that's interesting. And the lowest credit card utilization rate is actually 17.8%, which is also kind of surprising. I'm surprised that it's not even lower. But I guess that just goes to show people are using their credit cards, which is good. Um, and on average, 17.8% seems pretty healthy to me. 56% is quite high. So that means on average, people are 56% using their credit cards, which means there's probably a lot of people in that 100 zone, right? Because there's going to be some people with 0% as well, right? So you have to take into account that there's 0% and 100% and probably even over 100% for some people, right? If they're going overdraft. So let's click on region number 3 because it's been interesting. Yeah, so we can see that they have a lower credit participation rate than Toronto did. Toronto had 82%, and they have 60% for their age 18 to 34 bracket. Similar trends where their middle age group has the highest. But you can see their credit score is really not great. And then high utilization rates across their line of credit and credit cards, high participation rates. Yeah. Let's go back to Toronto, or to Halton rather. All right. I can't find Halton, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to search it in this search bar here. which is another feature. Okay, first you want to deselect everything and then search the place that you want and then select it. And now you'll just have that selected. And if you click the push pin, you'll zoom right in. Okay, so we're in Halton now. Yeah, I think we were in Toronto before, but Halton's nice too. Everywhere's nice in Canada. Let's be real. Okay. So we took a look at the credit utilization rate. So this measures the amount of revolving credit, a type of flexible borrowing arrangement that allows consumers to repeatedly draw funds up to a set limit, repay the balance, then borrow again. That is currently being used as a percentage of the total credit available from established credit limits. It's a leading indicator of financial stress. If the utilization increases, it can indicate that consumers are struggling with cash flow and relying on credit. It helps answer the question, are consumers maxing out their available safety nets to make ends meet? So if you see the credit utilization rate is very, very high in an area or higher than other areas. So if we take a look at, let's say, CMAs again, because CMAs are interesting, we'll select all again. And we're at credit card utilization rate again. The top one is Thompson at 33.6%, and then the bottom is Parksville at 17% for CMAs. So, if you're coming in at this top end, then it's probably not great. I would still say 33%, like that's not like alarming to me, but that means that it's being pulled up by the 100%, right? And we'll take a look at some correlations on the next page, and we can see how the credit card utilization rate being higher is correlated with things like higher debt. But we'll see that on the next page. Credit participation rate. So this measures the proportion of consumers carrying a balance on their line of credit or credit card. It answers the question, how heavily is the local population relying on revolving credit products to support their financial needs? So how much of the credit card are they using, and then how many people are actually using a credit card? And then below we have delinquency rates. So delinquency rates, this is the measure of the proportion of consumers that are overdue on their credit payments. So you're delinquent, right? So 30 to 59 days delinquent means that you haven't paid in 30 to 59 days. Likewise with 60 to 89 and 90 plus days. You got to be a bit careful with the coloring here, this yellow, orange, red, because this does not relate to the number that you see. So this 1% being yellow and this 0.5% being red. This relates just to the durations. So 30 to 59 days is yellow, 60 to 89 days is orange, and 90 days is red. Because, being 90 days delinquent is worse than being 30 days delinquent. And then for the 30 plus day delinquency rates, all the bars are yellow because it's kind of hard to say without looking at comparables what's bad and what's good. Like, is 0.2% for a mortgage delinquency rate of 30 plus days, is that bad or good? It's hard for me to say. If you're more familiar with these financial statistics, you'd probably be able to say whether or not that's good or bad for an area. But I'm just not sure. And you could look at comparables, which we'll do on the next page to figure out whether or not that's good or bad. Actually, maybe we'll look at that right now. So they're 0.2% for Halton, and we want to contextualize that a bit to see how they're doing against other people. So Halton was a census division, so I'm going to get my view back to census divisions. And then I'm going to switch to, what did we say? We said mortgage delinquency rates. So 0.2% for Halton. So if we change this to alphabetical, and then we can scroll down to H, and we get Halton is ranked 291. So 291 out of, if we switch back to the rank of measure and we go to the bottom, 291 out of 293 actually. So they have a very low mortgage delinquency rate, one of the lowest out of the census divisions, Halton. So that 0.2%, even though it's yellow, it's actually very good. And then the lowest or the highest mortgage delinquency rates are happening in division number 11 with 3.9%. And if we take a look at the map, we can see that the more rural areas, it seems, tend to have a bit higher of a delinquency rate. In division number 11 over here. We scroll back down to the delinquency rates. So if we read this definition here, Measures the proportion of consumers that are overdue on their credit payments. It answers the question, where are people actively failing to keep up with the basic cost of living? So overall delinquency rates, if these are high relative to other places, that's bad. And if they're low, that's good. Uh, and we see with the 30 plus days, the highest delinquency rates are happening with the installment loans. That makes sense to me. I feel like installment loans usually, if you have lower credit, there's something that you go for. So it makes sense that the lower credit loan would have the higher delinquency rate. Uh, Next up, we have credit cards at 1%. Let's take a look at the map for credit cards. I'm interested. It's fun to just play around with these sometimes. So credit card delinquency rate is highest in region number 3 at 7.1%, lowest in L'Île d'Orléans. And let's see Halton again. Let's do geography by alphabetical. Scroll. Halton 266. So if we remember, that was out of, I believe, let's see here, 293. So 266. It's quite low for credit card delinquency rate at 1%. And then you can also do things like we keep that number in our mind, the 1%. We can look at the national average as well, right? So we can switch this level of geography to national. And then we see the national is 1.3% for credit card delinquency rate. So Halton's doing 0.3% underneath the national, um, which is good. And if we take a look at the province, we can look at Ontario, which is coming in at number 11 at 1.3%. So the same as the national. Um, yeah. So some easy comparables are like, if you're working with, census tract, then you might want to compare it to the CMA. If you're working with census subdivision, you might want to compare it with the census division, just working up that hierarchy of geographies, right? So yeah, so the hierarchy of geographies like subdivision to division to province to national, and just comparing those different values as sort of benchmarks. So we'll go to the next page now. This next page is a bit confusing, or can be a bit confusing. So this is showing correlations. So you have an XY graph here. We don't usually do XY graphs just because some users can find them confusing, but I thought that it was interesting to look at, and I just wanted to throw it together and add it in here just as a little extra. So let's do some things that we would think are correlated. Right off the bat, let's just do credit score rate prime and credit score rate subprime. And we can see that these end up being null. So this is because these are perfectly negatively correlated, this prime and subprime. If we choose prime and prime, or any two of the same measures, then you're going to get a diagonal line, right? Because the correlation is 1-to-1 because it's just the same measure on each of the axes. But you can do interesting things if you choose different measures. So if we look at credit scores above or equal to 720, so prime, and then look at this against something like the average total debt per consumer, then we can sort of get into trends and outliers. So right now, there doesn't seem to be too clear of a trend between credit score and average total consumer debt, but you can kind of see a bit of an upward trend. So as credit scores are increasing, it seems that average total debt per consumer is increasing, but you can't really say anything too definitively here. And then likewise, the coloring is for the provinces right now. I believe the coloring, yeah, the coloring is just for provinces. It's hard to do coloring when you have so many dots, and making the coloring useful. So it's just provinces. And you can see right here that the provinces are kind of all just a mishmash. Kind of Ontario, or sorry, Quebec is grouping together here a bit, but it's kind of just a mishmash, which kind of shows that there isn't much dependence on province, which is kind of expected. Um, the only outlier there would be this grouping, I would say, of Quebec. It seems like Quebec in general, as they have higher credit scores, they don't have higher average total debt per consumer. Um, so we can see that they're low on the y-axis, but high on the x-axis. Whereas all these other groups, like if we take a look at British Columbia, for example, British Columbia is more spread out in their CMAs. So their CMAs have uh, more of a spread in the credit scores and more of a spread in the average total debt per consumer. Let's select. census subdivisions, get a whole bunch of dots on here. So now we can sort of see a bit of a trend, right? We can see that if someone has a low credit score, so if the credit score rate is low, so their prime rate is low, not many people have prime, and if not many people have prime, then that means that they have subprime. Then they have low average total debt per consumer, right? Which makes sense because the whole reason you have a credit score is so that the loaning agencies and stuff can assess your risk and then apply loans to you appropriately. So if you have a high credit score, then they're going to be more willing to loan you more money. So therefore, your average total debt per consumer is going to be higher. So this isn't super. I mean, it's interesting to see this correlation. But you kind of got to drill down if you want to do anything interesting, because right now we just have every census subdivision in Canada, which is just too many. So if we want, we can do something like go to, um, we'll start by going to CMA, and then we're going to select Ontario to just see Ontario CMAs. And then we are going to select uh, the CMA of Guelph, which is where I live. And now that we have this selected, so all we did was select our CMA. Now I'm going to switch this to census tract, and you'll see that all the census tracts within that CMA are still here now. So if you want, you can do it that way. Or you can do it by starting with census tract and then using these drop downs to filter down. You can do it either way. So now we're seeing the different census tracts for Guelph. If you're not familiar with your census tract, then I would just recommend going back to the main page. And now we're going to do the same thing again. So this time we'll start with census tract. We'll drill down into Ontario, and then we will drill down into Guelph. And then now we have this map that's laid beneath here. It's quite opaque. I might want to change the opacity of this just so that people can find stuff better. But we go here into the search the map. And let's see if we can. Sometimes this works, sometimes it doesn't. Okay, it's not working. But you can use the map to scroll in and find your CMA. Or sorry, find your census tract. But the opacity here is a bit rough. I'm gonna have to adjust this opacity, I think, for sure. Because you should be able to see the map underneath here and then be able to get a good idea of where you're located. But that's not possible right now with the opacity. So I got to fix that for you guys and for myself. Um, okay. That's an easy fix though, obviously. But anyway, so you go to this map to find your census tract. I live in the census tract, I believe 1.07 or around 1.07. So let's just take 1.07 as our guy here. And then we're going to go back to the correlation page. It's kind of hard to find 1.07. I might just go here and then do this and turn it on and off. I don't see it anywhere. So it's behind this bar. Yeah, this could be better. It's hard to work with census tracts just because of their numbers. Uh, but if you find your census tract that you're interested in, then you can figure out where it falls in this line. You can see now the trend, the upward trend. So as credit scores increase, average total debt per consumer also increases, as we expect. And there doesn't appear to be any big outliers here. And then we can see if we go back to the map, the lowest credit scores are happening over in 10.02 with 61.7, and then the highest are happening at 84.1%, 1.08. Let's go back to the correlation page and let's switch to census subdivisions within Ontario. Okay, so now it's broken and we see no items here. Okay, so what I'm going to do is see this is broken now and we don't have the option to select all again. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to census tract, and then now that I have census tract, I'm going to select all. Okay, we have those all selected. Census division. Okay, I think I broke it for good, guys. I might have to restart it. This is not good. I'm not sure why that happened. Um, Let me see here. I can fix this on the fly, I think. Mm. switch this to all values in database quickly. There we go. So what I did here, as we saw it broke, what you can do is you can right click here, and then that's going to give you a bit of developer options. And instead of doing only relevant values, I chose to do all values in database so that these filters aren't filtering each other, which then gave the options back and we were able to get our dots back. But in that case, I probably would have just restarted the dashboard and started from scratch again. But I'll take a look in to see why that error happened. But let's go to census subdivisions and just look at census subdivisions within Ontario. Um, so yeah, we can see the correlation here again. Let's take a look at something else. So maybe let's take a look at on our x-axis. I'm gonna put average total debt per consumer, which we had for y-axis, and then we just get the diagonal line. And on the y-axis, I'm gonna put the credit card utilization rate. This should be interesting. So credit card utilization rate here is on this y-axis, and then average total debt per consumer is on this x-axis. And you can see that as credit card utilization rate increases, the average total debt per consumer actually decreases, right? Which is kind of counterintuitive, I think. It's a bit interesting because you would think that as the utilization rate of the credit cards, so people are putting more debt on their credit card, you would think that that would lead to higher average total debt per consumer. But we can see that's not actually the case here with this correlation. So what's actually the case is that these higher credit card utilization rates are having lower total debt per consumers. And what this probably means is that these consumers have low credit score, right? So they have high credit card utilization rate, but probably a low credit score. And that's why their total debt is low. So if you're using your credit card a lot and you're maxing it out, you're going delinquent on it, then your credit score is going to be lower, right? Um, so if we take a look at credit card utilization rate now, and then we switch the x-axis from being average total debt per consumer to being credit score greater than or equal to 720, so prime rate, I would expect that we would see as credit card utilization increases, the prime rate decreases. So let's see if that's true. So it seems that, yeah, as credit card utilization increases, the credit score prime rate decreases as we'd expect. But you can see the majority of people are clustered around this area with this like 80% credit score in the prime rate and then 20% credit score utilization rate. That seems to be like where everybody's clustering. But then you can take a look and there's sort of outliers here. So if we take a look, there's a big spread happening on this left side of this graph. So it's very tight on this right side of this graph, but there's a big spread on the left side. So it's very tight on this right side, which means that whenever there's a high credit score, there's low credit card utilization rates, it seems, right? So there's no dots in this quadrant, for example. There's no one with a high credit score and high utilization rate. It's always high credit score, low utilization rate. Whereas we don't see the same thing with the left side of the graph here. On the left side, it's more spread out, and you can see that just because they have a low credit score, doesn't really say much about their credit card utilization rate because you have like North Spirit Lake here, which has 9.5% prime rate and 30% utilization rate, and then you have Summer Beaver, which has nearly the same prime rate at 9.6%, but double the utilization rate at 63.1%. So what this is saying is that credit score is very correlated with utilization rate at this right side, but it's not very correlated on this left side. So if people have low credit score, then their usage of their credit card is variable. But if they have high credit score, then typically they have low utilization rate, is what that's saying. We can also take a look at credit card utilization rate against like credit card participation rate. That might be interesting. So again, we're seeing a cluster over here on this right, but there's not too much. It's kind of flat. There are some outliers here. So North Spirit Lake is an outlier with, oh wait, I didn't change this. I thought I changed this. Oh, I changed the wrong one. So we want credit score. Let me switch this back to um, credit card utilization rate, and then we'll put credit card participation rate. There we go. So we can see as participation increases, so does utilization, which is kind of expected. You gotta participate to utilize, so they're like they're kind of perfectly correlated in that way. Like if you are utilizing your credit card, then you're participating in credit card usage, obviously. So as participation rate increases, utilization rate increases as well. But we can see there is, quite a bit of spread here on this top right area. And there's a couple outliers here. So North Spirit Lake, again, is an outlier with 63% participation rate and 30% utilization rate. So their participation rate is not very high, but their utilization rate, sorry, let me start over again on that. Their utilization rate, so they're the farthest left here. Sorry, they're the farthest left here, so their credit participation rate is the lowest, but their utilization rate is quite a bit higher than all these other dots, right? So even though they have a high credit participation rate, they have a low credit participation rate, they have a high utilization rate comparatively, is what that's saying. Yeah, I gotta add an option where you can highlight one of the dots because it would be great if you could highlight just a dot of interest. Because yeah, it's just so many dots. It's good for getting these overall trends, but finding your specific place is a bit hard in here. Got to make that easier. Okay, what else might be interesting here? I'm not sure. If we switch to the notes page quickly, the notes page just has all the information that was in the eye hover over icons, just listed out here in a longer format. So this is the same information as these hover icons. It's just on the notes page now. Yeah, if we go back, let's see. It's Ontario, credit participation rate. Um, I forgot to mention the combined utilization rate. That's just the combined of line of credit and credit card. So as you'd expect, I'll always be around the middle. It's not the average of those two numbers because it actually goes into the um, the calculation, right? So it's a weighted average of these two numbers. Where should we click? Let's click on Toronto. So yeah, maybe I'll just do some sample analysis of Toronto. So if we take a look at the charts here, what do we see right off the bat? We see that they have good participation rate. It's quite high. It's highest among the middle age, which you'd expect. It seems to be, if we let's look at national quickly, actually. So if we click Canada, then we get for Canada. So participation rate across Canada is 78% for the young and old brackets, and then for the middle age bracket, 88%. 71% prime rate, 29% subprime. If we look at the breakdown of average consumer debt, we can see that the total average debt is 70,000, and that's broken out into 50,000 mortgage and 20,000 non-mortgage. And their highest non-mortgage is line of credit, followed by auto, followed by installment, followed by credit card. So credit card is actually the lowest for national at 2,912. Utilization rates national would be line of credit 37%, combined 31, credit card 22. So it's always good to look at the national to get like some averages. So if you're going to compare your area of interest, I would compare it against the national average, the provincial average, the census division average, all those different geographies that relate to it, right? And if you're looking at a CMA, you might want to look at other CMAs that are similarly sized to yours. So if you're looking at, a big city such as Toronto, you might want to look at another big city such as Montreal or Vancouver to get comparables. Um, if we take a look at the delinquency rates, we can see that it's 1.1% for 30 to 59 days, 0.5% for 60 to 89 days, and 0.8% for 90 plus days. It's kind of interesting. So that means that this middle ground has the lowest, which suggests that people are paying, they're just paying late, right? It's sort of interesting how that suggests that because it is saying that, they're missing payments if they're 30 to 59 days and they're missing payments if they're 90 plus days, but they're making the payments within the 60 to 89 days because the delinquency rate there is lower, um, which is interesting because it means that people are either, they're either missing or they're really missing. They're only so like probably they miss it for a month and then they pay it off the next month, right? Not many people are missing it for 3+ months. Um, Overall delinquency rate 2.4% for the national average. Mortgage 0.4%. It's interesting. Yeah, and then we'll take a look at Ontario now. What you can do too is you can like take a screenshot of this and then compare the screenshots between the two screenshots. You can quickly flip through them to go back and forth if you want. Some other stuff you can do. Let's see here. All right, never mind. I'm not going to do that right now. Um, yeah, I don't know if there's any questions or if anybody wants to explore anything in particular, but
Awesome.
that's about what I got for this one, guys.
Thank you, August. That was very comprehensive. We got some questions in the chat box that Michael responded to some. I'm going to ask the rest of it. And also Michael put that the dashboard, the link to the dashboard and link to the data sets used to create this dashboard in the chat box. You can access that if it's your question as well. There is a question asking about what does the credit card participation rate mean? Is it defined by using a credit card during a specific period of time, or does it simply refer to whether someone has used it at least once?
That's a good question. Um, and I'm not sure if I have the answer because this is just saying that um, they're participating if they have a balance. And I guess you're asking when is that balance? And I guess this is just a point in time measurement. So this is 2025 Q1, and they would just be taking a shot in time if they have a balance, right? So let's say that my credit card limit is $1,000 um, just to make it easy. So my credit card limit's $1,000, and I'm using $500 of that credit limit. Then my utilization rate would be 50%, but my participation rate is 100% because I have a balance. So the $500 is just 100%. So this is saying that 75.8% of people within Ontario have a credit card that has a balance. Yeah. And I believe that that balance is above zero. I don't think the balance is zero. That wouldn't really make sense to me. Because a zero balance is, basically you don't have it. Um, but yeah, good question. I hope that answered it a little bit. I hope we answered it during the presentation as well. But the participation rate, if you have a balance, then you're participating. The utilization rate is your balance over your limit.
Awesome. Thank you. Valentin, if you have more questions, you're welcome to unmute your device if you like. And I see that there are questions coming, and Michael responded that the dashboard data use going down to the census tract level. That says the smallest level of geography here. Does anyone has any questions for August related to this dashboard? Please unmute your device and ask. I see Mark here.
Hi. Yeah, thanks. Thanks, August. It was great dashboard and great presentation. Very interesting. Um, you mentioned earlier something about the average mortgage debt per consumer, and you said something about if it was there was like a zero balance. And I didn't really understand that, what was meant by that. If you do you recall, it was earlier on in your
Yeah,
presentation
yeah,
when you were
I can answer
okay.
that. Thank you, first of all. Secondly, so this, if we look here and we look at the example calculation, this example calculation, the denominator, we have total consumers. So within the data set, you can get the number of mortgage trades. So this would be the number of mortgages there are. So there's two different things that you could have. You can have the number of mortgages that there are, or you can have the number of consumers that there are. Um, so what this average is doing is it's averaging over the number of consumers, not over the number of mortgages. So the average mortgage debt per mortgage is going to be much higher than this, because mortgages in general, they're not $0, right? Uh, any loan's not going to be $0. So that's just what that means. So this is looking at the debt per consumer, not the debt per trade. So if you want the debt per trade, you can calculate that from the data set. And that's also interesting. The only note with that is that I believe the non-mortgage trades don't add up properly. Like if you add up these four sections into the non-mortgage, they're not adding up properly right now. We're going to get some updated data, and those should add up properly now. Um, but yeah, so that's just what that is. So this mortgage debt is the mortgage debt per consumer, not the mortgage debt per mortgage, if that makes sense. And like the credit card debt per consumer, not the credit card debt per credit card.
Yeah.
So the credit card debt per credit card is actually going to be higher than this 3,000 because this is taking into account people with zero credit card debt, I believe.
Oh,
Yeah.
definitely. Yeah. And then, well, the average mortgage debt, that number is really high or much higher as well. So,
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, yeah, so that is a bit deceiving. Is it possible to get that then? Or is it not as accurate?
It's possible to get that. It's just it really depends on what like what number you want to report. You can report either of the numbers. And I don't know, they have different values, right? So this is why I think we're going to add another graph to this, just to the right of here that will have that, the average mortgage debt per mortgage and non-mortgage per non-mortgage. Um, we should be able to put that in there pretty easily. We're also trying to collect feedback during this call to make our dashboards better. So if anybody has any other feedback or anything, let me know. But yeah, we could add that one in. But um, it depends on what you want to look at. So you can either look at it on a per consumer basis or on a per trade basis, and we just chose to do it on a per consumer basis here.
Okay. No,
Yeah.
interesting. Yeah, I mean, it'll probably provide similar information, but the numbers are just very different. So
Yeah, because you see like, I don't know, like auto loan per consumer of 4,687, like that seems very low. So does mortgage debt at 58,000. That seems very low, right? Because mortgages are the average mortgage is higher than 58,000 for sure.
that definitely, yeah. Okay, very interesting. Yeah,
But
thanks
yeah, it
very
takes into
much.
account people without mortgages.
Awesome. Thank you, Mark, for the question and sharing your feedback. If you want to kind of check out their dashboard and submit your feedback, please send it to information@communitydata.ca. So we would be happy to take feedbacks that will improve the work. Um, and there is question from Martin that asking, I assume that is blends in those with nil value loans still on the books, improperly discharged.
Um, Sorry, that was asking if this has people who are still in the books but weren't discharged.
Probably, yeah. Martin, if you
Yeah,
kind of, you're welcome to.
yeah. The average customer, I'm just assuming maybe it's also dragging in all the people who still have a nil value loan that hasn't been formally discharged, so it drags down the average. It's kind of like having a 0 on a test, dragging down a GPA.
Yeah, it could be. It's just any consumer. So if anyone
Yeah,
has like if they have any sort of product, then they're a consumer. So
yeah.
yeah, it gets dragged down a lot.
And also
Um,
assume that we can just back of the envelope double those for a two-person household, right?
yeah, I guess so. If you want to do back the envelope for sure. You double that for 2 person. Yeah, that makes sense to me. I guess if you take that into account, it's a bit better because you'd think with mortgages there'd be usually 2 people on a mortgage. So that would double that number, which puts it a bit more in line. I think with Equifax, they were saying the average mortgage out was like, uh, hold on, actually, let's stop sharing this. I think I took some screenshots of their presentation that I can take a look at. Let's see here on the desktop. Yeah, here we go. Um, No, I don't have their mortgage, but their average balance for auto is 24,000 nationally. And if we look at ours nationally, on the per consumer basis, it's 4,684. Oh, sorry, I'm not sharing my screen anymore.
Reason I brought up the nil value ones as well is I know somebody who's dealing with their parents having a paid off their mortgage in 78, but it wasn't properly discharged with the county office, so it's still on the books as a nil value loan.
Yeah, and if they have like a credit card or anything, then they would still be a consumer. So I don't know if the nils probably aren't that big of a deal because those people probably have other credit products as well. But it's definitely something to consider. And like I said, I'll throw together that second graph. That shouldn't be too bad, and I'll get it on there for you guys. Yeah, at any time with any questions, you guys can always contact us at information@communitydata.ca, and that'll go to myself and Mike. And yeah, just any questions, anything, please feel free to bother us.
Perfect. So in the meantime, if you want to kind of prepare any other questions, I will kind of share this webinar page for the upcoming webinars. We don't have any scheduled one right now, but we will going to add that soon. So that's census data, the presentation we had in the May. We want to have it again in early September, and the tax filer webinar as well, probably late August or early September. And we will post it on the webinar page. And also we always promote it through our MailChimp newsletter. So if you have already signed up, that's great. You will receive that as soon as the dates are ready. And if not, please use the link to join our mailing list. So I am going to stop the recording.